What's an early sign that the relationship isn't going to work? In my last relationship, after a couple of months, I noticed that my boyfriend gradually stopped laughing at my jokes, memes, and humor. He always had to one-up me, even if his joke wasn't better. Eventually, he stopped acknowledging my humor at all. That's when I realized he was so insecure that he felt he had to be the only funny one. We'd been friends for 3 years before we started dating and used to have so much fun together. But when I became his girlfriend, he suddenly saw me as competition and made it his mission to make me feel smaller. Story 2. They don't want to hang out as much as you do. They don't answer your texts for days and they play stupid little mind games. The texting issue is a big one. It's a hill I'm willing to go away on. People love to say that they're just busy, don't like texting, or that it's just their personality, but that's never true. All the men in my life who just wanted to keep me around but not really engage were men who needed 2 days to reply to a simple text. No one is that busy. And if they are, it takes 10 seconds to say so. Leaving someone on red for days in the middle of a conversation where you're online all the time is a clear sign of a lack of real interest. Don't get me wrong, I hate texting all the time, but I never let anyone wait 2 or 3 days for a response. Story 3. It really depends on your intentions. If you pursue someone just to satisfy your ego, not because of a real connection, the relationship usually doesn't last more than 3 months. I've seen people chase others just for validation, and once they get what they want, the effort disappears. That's not love, that's ego. But for those who start with a genuine understanding, honesty, and no pretenses, that kind of connection can actually last. Thanks for the post. Made me realize I'm still single. Lol. Story 4. I took a girl on a date to an apple orchard once. It was our second or third date, and it ended up being a bit of a disaster. It was a little later in the season, so most of the good apples were gone, but it was a nice day, and I set it up mostly so we could spend some time together without our phones or any technology. She spent the entire time complaining and moping about how we had missed peak apple season. Story 5. You're envisioning a future with someone who has traits your current partner doesn't display. You might hope to see these traits or believe they're just below the surface. However, they never materialize as you invest more time and energy into a relationship that isn't meeting your needs in the present, all while you keep thinking that one day you will. Story 6. A disagreement about what constitutes a crisis can be a sign of a bad relationship. This doesn't matter if one partner freaks out over something minor or if the other acts like everything is fine when the world is burning down. The objective truth doesn't matter. What's important is how each partner perceives the other's reaction. An inability to meet in the middle is a clear indication of mismatched values. Story 7. Different life goals. If you and your partner have different ideas about how you want to live your lives, it may be time to reconsider the relationship. This includes major life goals like marriage, having children, or travel, as well as smaller day-to-day things. Awkward silences. When silences feel awkward instead of comfortable, it can be a sign of a bad relationship. Manipulative or controlling behavior. If either person shows early signs of being manipulative or controlling, you should be wary. This behavior is always small at first. Me versus you mentality. If they frame an argument as me versus you instead of us versus the problem, it's a major red flag. Inability to apologize. If your partner cannot apologize correctly and take ownership of their mistakes, it's a problem. We're all human and mistakes are going to happen. Story 8. When someone refuses to change even a minor flaw for you, especially when you're trying to introduce them to your family, it's a problem. I was once with a girl I was very fond of, but she had the dirtiest, most vulgar way of speaking. But it made a sailor blush. She was like a Chinese version of Andrew Dice Clay who never stopped saying bad words. I wanted to bring her home to meet my parents, so I gently and politely asked her not to get intoxicated and start shouting in Chinese bad words after an hour or two. She literally refused to acknowledge that our public language and behavior were rude, so I eventually broke up with her over it. She even dialed me intoxicatedly a couple of times over the years, randomly saying, "I love you," in the middle of the night. But she never stopped saying bad words so much, and that was something I would not force my family to endure, so we never seriously got back together. Story 9. If their friends don't like you, it could be a sign of a bad relationship. Your friends likely share similar values and may see your partner from a clearer perspective than you do. It's often only a matter of time before the initial spark fades and you realize their friends were right all along. Furthermore, if a problem arises between you, your partner will likely be bombarded with messages from their friends telling them to end the relationship. The same is true if your friends don't like your partner. Story 10. If your relationship is based solely on lust and charm, it will fall apart pretty quickly once that initial passion fades. Emotional support is the glue that holds a relationship together. When you understand this, it's like a superpower when dealing with women. Most men don't realize how big of a deal emotional support is because they tend to focus more on physical connection, while women care most about the emotional connection. Trust me, boys, figuring this out will greatly improve your relationships. Story 11. Unwillingness to work on themselves. If either person is unwilling to work on their own issues, the relationship won't last. Disregarding boundaries. A partner who consistently disregards your boundaries is a major red flag. Toxic comments. If they say toxic things like, "What, you think you're better than me?" Yeah, it's a major red flag for an unhealed emotional wound, even if they're being sarcastic. Words don't match actions. If their words don't match their actions, it's time to leave. Assuming the worst. If they build up resentment or dislike toward you based on a wrong assumption, refuse to ask for clarification, and defend their way of thinking, they are doomed to repeat that behavior. Lack of respect or dishonesty. A lack of respect on either side will end a relationship. Dishonesty is another clear indicator of a lack of respect. Lack of communication. If either person refuses to acknowledge an issue and work on it, the relationship is unlikely to succeed. Incompatibility. If you're incompatible, for example, if you have a lack of desire for each other or different views on having children, the relationship won't work. Downplaying accomplishments. If they downplay your accomplishments, you should probably get out of that relationship. Story 12. An early sign of a bad relationship is when someone becomes defensive the moment you express hurt or confusion, instead of showing curiosity about what you're feeling. I was talking to a guy who said he really liked me, but anytime I gently opened up about feeling disconnected or unsure, he would respond by justifying his behavior instead of trying to understand my feelings. It became clear that he wasn't actually interested in getting to know me, only in protecting his own comfort. If someone can't make space for your feelings early on, it only gets harder later. Story 13. I once had a friend I talked to online. He was from Missouri and I was from Las Vegas. We met in a music group on Facebook and he kept asking me to come to Missouri to meet him. I honestly thought the guy should be the one to travel to meet the girl if he was serious. But the time we finally met, he acted so strangely. He knew my mom and my brother, and he told me that if I wanted to take things further, I would have to get rid of my mom. If people don't have a good relationship with their own parents to the point where they tell me to get rid of mine, it's not going to work out. Story 14. I once dated this girl who discussed one of the other guys she was seeing, one of her friends. I was only 19 at the time, so I was completely ignorant as to what was really happening. Basically, a more involved friends with benefits situation. She was a little older than I was, but she had much more worldly experience, so I was way over my head. We didn't date for long, but she accidentally taught me some important lessons about valuing my time and energy. I then took those lessons and completely ignored them for the next decade. Story 15. He worries about his ex-wife too much. He'd often say, "I can't go anywhere, I have kids all the time." Yet he has 2 kid-free weekends a month and she usually agrees to take them. I think he was just playing the victim, with a poor me attitude about his wife cheating on him and him having the kids most of the time because she can't. Meanwhile, his ex would go on trips and he couldn't believe it. She'd buy something new and he'd complain to me and I'd just say, "Cool. Sounds like fun." Story 16. The minute you're picking up his laundry or you begin taking on duties of a maid, he shushes you when you're trying to tell a story. He treats you differently when his friends are around. He's constantly calling and texting when you're trying to work or study or do whatever. He has a bizarre attachment to his mother. His reason for divorce is that it's his ex-wife's fault. He has given up custody of his children. He's behind on child support. He has a massive amount of debt beyond student loans and is not paying his student loans. He has an alcohol, substance, or porn fixations. Story 17. If you're already in couples therapy and you haven't hit the 6-month mark yet, that's an early sign of a bad relationship. I once knew a couple like this. It was a rampantly bisexual, polyamorous man, and she was on the lesbian side of possibly bisexual. He was her first male partner. They were in therapy because she was having a hard time accepting that he was polyamorous, even though he had been open about it from the start. He was struggling with trying to be monogamous for her, especially since she had said that she was fine with him being non-monogamous. She was not, in fact, fine with it. It wasn't their respective intimate inclinations that made the whole situation a mess. Both were queer in their own ways, and that was fine. The problem was they were both trying to force a relationship that was never going to work because, ultimately, she was monogamous and he was not. There's not something therapy was going to fix. They were fundamentally incompatible. Story 18. You don't need to change someone to love them. If you truly love someone, you won't care so much about them having a minor habit like smoking cigarettes and a little here and there. However, with bigger things like fixations, you need to give them time. Be there to support them on their journey to recovery, but be prepared. It takes time and doesn't happen overnight. If they relapse, don't be angry. Encourage them to get rid of what they have and try again. It often takes multiple attempts. People who are fixated just need love, encouragement, and support. Most of all, they need to be helped in replacing their unhealthy habits with healthier ones. At the end of the day, no user is proud of being one. They all want to quit, but they often don't have a support person to help them because most of the time, family and close friends give up on them very quickly. And all they know is that behavior because that's all they're around now and that everyone else has dropped off the face of the earth. If you've never been fixated, you'll never truly understand the roller coaster of feelings, emotions, anxiety, body sweats, and withdrawals. That feeling like your body has been shocked and jolted a little. Be patient, be understanding, and most of all, be there to support them for the long haul. It will be worth it, not only for the user, but for you as well, because you were there to help them all the way. I understand this can be hard on the person who isn't fixated. I've been on both sides of the fence. It's draining, emotional, intense, and depressing, and it definitely takes a toll on you, but I truly believe that if you want to help someone, you'll be there until the end. Story 19. Lol. These comments alone make me laugh. On the inside, humor is like beauty. Perception is everything. What's funny to me might not be to the next person. It all depends on the context. To the dozens of men who talk about the eye rolls and contempt, how much messed up stuff did you inflict on her while she sat in misery before she shut you out? There isn't anything you can say that will be funny because you're still a cheating, lying schmuck. Even if you're not cheating, you try to make her feel like you are because you're so insecure that you want someone else to be punished with you. When she finally can't take it anymore, you wonder why she doesn't laugh at your corny jokes, especially when you never had a personality and literally survived off all her sunshine. Story 20. I think one of the biggest early signs that things might not work is when you can't laugh together anymore. A sense of humor, especially in tough moments, is huge in a relationship. If you find yourselves getting irritated or annoyed at small jokes, or if it feels like you're on totally different wavelengths, it can be a major red flag. Life is full of ups and downs, and when you can't laugh at the little things or support each other through awkward or tough moments, that's when you know something's off. Being able to joke, even about the stupid things, helps you stay connected when things get heavy. I honestly believe laughter is the glue that holds a relationship together. If you can't have fun with each other, what do you even have? Story 21. Arguing within the first few months, especially those early months, is a major red flag. For some context, I've been with my girlfriend for over a year. We talk every day and are very connected to each other's lives, and we never argued. There have been no unspoken truths or cold conversations between us and no passive aggressiveness. Nothing. We can disagree on a lot of things, but it never turns into an argument. You shouldn't be arguing in the first place, but if you are, it's probably not a good sign. How can you argue with someone you barely know? Story 22. I've lost many girlfriends over politics lately. It used to not even matter that much. Years ago, I dated women who didn't even know the difference between the political parties. Now I've lied to 2 girlfriends about who I voted for. Politics are destroying our country and they're trying to divide us. It's working. LA is about to lay off thousands of employees because they can't afford these protests. They're saying the employees are non-essential, but half the fire trucks didn't work during recent fires because these non-essential employees had already been laid off. I'll no longer date outside my political party. Story 23. When one partner rolls their eyes at something the other has done, it signals a lack of respect. The seemingly small gesture often reflects an absence of the patience, emotional bandwidth, and healthy communication necessary to sustain a meaningful partnership. If your partner laughs at you in a way that feels unexpected or hurtful, and you hesitate to bring it up for fear of being labeled overly sensitive or unable to take a joke, that's a red flag. It suggests an imbalance in emotional safety, which is an essential component of any healthy relationship. When a partner makes offhand, seemingly insignificant comments, whether flattering or critical, that feels strangely misplaced. It's often a sign that they hold unspoken opinions about you. These underlying thoughts, left unaddressed, can create a growing disconnect between how you believe they see you and how they actually do. Over time, that gap can become a major threat to the relationship's foundation. Story 24. My partner once said that I was habitually angry. I have epilepsy and it's not well managed yet because I was only recently diagnosed. I'm having a hard time coping with all the changes, and my seizures affect the area of the brain that controls speech and emotions. I never tried to put himself in my shoes. I also felt like I was never listened to, considered, or just dismissed. I've been working on myself, but he hasn't. I recently had to make a tough decision. Well, it was an easy decision, but hard to execute. I chose to move to another state with my daughter so she could spend more time with her dad. My partner refused to come with me, and I refused to choose a man over my daughter like my mother did. Recently, I started to miss him, but I recognize that it's a trauma bond. I spent 5.5 years with nothing to show for it. I hope to find myself again one day. I feel like I have no idea who I am, and it's so hard to keep going. I have so much more going on, and I feel like I'm drowning every second of every day and just want to give up. Story 25. The relationship starts to feel like a bottomless pit. No matter how much effort you put into things don't improve and you get less and less back every day. Alternatively, you realize that you can't problem solve for anything when you're together, even simple tasks that require nothing more than open communication. Relationships require work, but they also need to be functional. If basic compatibility keeps you from working together as a partnership, it's doomed. Story 26. I got dumped after a 9-year relationship about 6 weeks ago. Retrospectively, I somewhat knew something was wrong for about a year before the relationship ended, but I definitely didn't know that I knew at the time. Things I've recognized since the breakup include, he became more distant. I chalked this up to the challenges he was facing as he started a new and very difficult career. He stopped making sacrifices for me. He had to move away for 6 months for training for his new job and wouldn't come to see me on weekends because he was so busy. This made sense at the time, but now I realize that while he probably was busy, if he had been feeling the same way about a relationship as he used to, he would have made the time, at least sometimes. He needed a secondary reason to visit. The one time he did visit me, we spent much of the time with his friends. I remember thinking when he left that weekend that maybe he'd want to visit me more now that he realized he could see his friends too. It didn't occur to me that seeing me should have been reason enough to want to visit. He stopped saying I love you. I made the unhealthy decision to scroll back through our text messages and noticed that between September 21 and November 8, I said I love you via text 45 times and he only said it back 13 times. And he only said it first 7 times. Somehow I didn't notice this as a problematic sign at the time, even though it's so obviously a problem looking back. I started questioning whether I should tell him things. I didn't want to bring up things like having kids, when we'd buy our first dog, or successes I had experienced at work because I was worried that it would upset him or make him feel badly about himself. If you feel uncomfortable talking openly with your partner about issues you're facing or anything in your life, then that's a major problem. Our intimate life became less active, with both of us making excuses about being tired or stressed. This was even though we were newly long distance and didn't see each other as often, and probably should have found it next to impossible to stay away from each other. I'm not sure what I could have done to be more aware of these things as they were happening. I obviously should have noticed, as these signs are so big, but when you're blinded by the hope that your love is enough to get you through, it's super easy to put on blinders. Just try to never take your relationship for granted and be honest with yourself. And hopefully you'll be able to notice these signs and work on the relationship together before it's too late. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 27. There's a quote I read a long time ago about how relationships that rely on the feeling of love rather than an actual dedication are doomed to fail. I personally found a lot of truth in that. All of my previous relationships ended when I realized that I was the only one dedicated to make things work. It also helps to remind myself of that little mantra when things get rough in my current relationship. What's more important? Winning an argument over something entirely insignificant or my partner's feelings? Is this a win for the relationship or a win for me? Specifically, my red flags were indifference. They stare at you blankly as you express your feelings of hurt. Even the possibility of breaking up doesn't seem to faze them. Extreme defensiveness. They never offer a real apology. It didn't matter how calmly or non-accusatorily I tried to bring up an issue or concern. It would get completely turned around and I was made to feel like a terrible person. Blame shifting. There was always some personality trait of mine that was actually causing all the issues, and it was something that I needed to apologize for and work on. I found myself saying things like, well, once X happens, things will get better, or if I just change Y about myself or my situation, he'll love me again like he used to. Of course, nothing ever made a difference. There are so many other very obvious cruelty and manipulative warning signs. Obvious now, with hindsight, but it all leads back to a general lack of commitment to the relationship. It's a truly awful feeling to watch the person you love fall out of love with you. It hurts so much that it feels easier to ignore it or wait for something to change, but all that does is prolong the inevitable. Sadly, there's no guaranteed immediate relief from a breakup. It can take months, sometimes even years. Eventually, though, it gets better. I grew so much by ending my previous relationship. I gained more self-respect, became a better communicator and a more reflective person, and I'm happier. I'm sure they are as well. Still have some ongoing baggage that haunts me sometimes, but I'm working on it. Story 28. They become non-committal on plans, especially those that involve reservations. The conversation seems less engaging than it used to be, as if you're just going through the motions of asking each other's day. Deep personal conversations become superficial or stay stuck in prolonged, unresolved conflict. They ask if you ever think about dating other people. This might seem obvious, but it's a major red flag that's easy to miss. Their 5-year plan changes vastly and seemingly out of the blue. Story 29. In my last relationship, neither of us had a car and we lived more than 50 minutes away from each other. We had a budget, so one of us could take an Uber to the other's house and back for the weekend. Whenever I questioned the inconvenient cost of the Uber, she would say, "It doesn't matter, it's worth spending that money just to see you." After about a month and a couple of fights and tough conversations, she changed her mind about taking an Uber to see me, saying, "It's not worth the money, I need to save." I knew the relationship was already rocky, but after hearing that, I knew there was no way of saving it. She's a very nice person, though. We just had different points of view on things. I still think about her all the time and hope she's doing well. Story 30. Silence is often a big red flag. When you and your partner start texting and calling each other less, it usually means your significant other has found someone new and exciting to talk to. Most of my exes just ghosted me instead of formally breaking up with me, so that's been my experience. People get bored. I don't know how others find someone to marry or stay in relationships for 2+ years. My relationships are usually passionate for a year and then just fade away. I guess this applies mostly to people in their early 20s. Maybe people who are older and wiser of longer-lasting relationships. I really don't know how you all do it. Maybe if I had more money, they would last longer. This comment went from 0 to 100 really quickly. Story 31. You may know Dr. John Gottman as the guy who can predict divorce with over 90% accuracy. His life's work in marital stability and divorce prediction has been well documented in the media and was even featured in the bestseller Blank by Malcolm Gladwell. After watching thousands of couples argue in his lab, he identified specific negative communication patterns that predict divorce. He called them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Contempt is the most destructive of the 4 horsemen because it conveys the message, "I'm better than you, I don't respect you." It's so destructive, in fact, that couples who are contemptuous of each other are more likely to suffer from infectious illnesses than those who are not. The target of contempt is made to feel despised and worthless. Contempt can show up in many ways, such as treating others with disrespect, mocking them with sarcasm, using hostile humor or name-calling, mimicking or using body language like eye-rolling and sneering. When contempt starts to overwhelm a relationship, you tend to forget your partner's positive qualities, at least while you're upset. You can't remember a single positive quality or act. The immediate erosion of admiration is an important reason why contempt should be eliminated from a relationship. Contempt erodes the bond that holds a couple together. It's impossible to build a connection when your relationship is deprived of respect. Here's the good news. Dr. Gottman's ability to predict divorce is contingent on behaviors not changing over time. You can reverse a pattern of contempt in your relationship before it's too late. The antidote lies in building fondness and admiration. Dr. Gottman discovered that the best way to measure fondness and admiration is to ask couples about their past. Questions like, how did you meet, and what were your first impressions of each other, can reveal the strength of their underlying connection. Story 32. I used to date a guy who was struggling mentally and financially and was just pretty lonely. We got close and fell in love, but over the course of a few years, he wouldn't do anything to change his situation, so I helped. Got him out of debt, new clothes, and I encouraged and went with him to the gym, motivated him to work on a side project every day, and so on. And he got his life together. He was happier and more confident. He then dumped me. I always wonder why he ended things after I made so much effort to help him better himself. Did he get more confident and suddenly think it was too good for me? I don't know. Story 33. When you feel like the effort you're putting into the relationship outweighs the return, that's a clear sign that something is wrong. Your relationship should make you happy, not feel like a job or an obligation. There are some cases where two indifferent people can make it work because they each do just enough to keep the other content without being miserable. This isn't ideal for most people, but it can work. However, once you cross the line and feel like the relationship is draining your energy or freedom and happiness, that's a good sign that it's time to end it. Story 34. Resentment is a relationship ender. You know that one thing they did 6 months ago? They apologized and you moved on, but you never really got over it. You feel crazy for bringing it up again, so you don't. Instead of talking about your feelings, you let every little thing they do start to bother you, so you start working overtime or pick up time-consuming hobbies just to avoid them. The love is over, and the writing is on the wall, but you refuse to acknowledge it. Then you meet a new girl at work and start bonding over innocent stuff. For example, you like art and you see on her Instagram that she paints. Now you're talking to her about art. Not hitting on her, but you're fascinated by her work. You then realize you enjoy talking to her more than you like talking to your wife. Your wife never wants to talk about anything fun anymore. She just wants to talk about serious things and nag you about small stuff, like the way you do your laundry. Now she's getting upset because you're paying too much attention to this other girl. Even though nothing is going on, you start to feel guilty about showing another woman so much affection. You finally ask the new girl to watch a movie with you, and you find out she's in a committed relationship. Now you're going through a divorce, and that girl you thought was your second chance doesn't want to talk to you about art anymore because you made things weird. All of this happened because you resented that one thing your wife did that bothered you 6 months ago. Story 35. Before I start, there's no such thing as an early sign that a relationship is for sure coming to an end. However, there are many signs that it may not last or that it won't be a healthy relationship for everyone involved if it does. One of the very early signs is when you're focused on who they might be, if, insert infinite possible things, or how great they will be when they eventually grow out of, insert infinite possible habits. People are who they are, and it is extremely rare for that to change. How people behave and how they adapt to who they are so they can have healthier relationships is also pretty rare because it's the beginning of eventual real change. Unfortunately, even people who will eventually make big changes end up having to travel a road you are not willing to follow. This isn't because you won't love who they will become, but because the process of their growth will come with relationship-damaging moments that create habits that, you guessed it, require an environmental change to move past. This almost always means ending the current relationship. I'm sure there will be a bunch of people who downvote this because it offends their misguided internal illusions about what people are and how we grow in real life. There absolutely are exceptions to this general trend. However, it's pretty much like betting you're the one person who won't get run over if you sprint blindfolded through traffic. It can happen, but it's an extremely foolish assumption to make. It takes two very, very self-aware people who are both more concerned with the health of their relationship than with hanging on to their own ego or being right. These people either didn't have problems to begin with or they've already come a long way on their journey. That's my 2 cents. Story 36. I recently got out of a 5-year relationship. Here are 2 non-obvious signs that I missed. Gaps in regular communication. It could be something as simple as going 2 days without a text or a snap when you normally communicate every day. This might seem minor. They were busy, for example, but when it starts to happen regularly, it can mean they're talking to someone new or are no longer interested in talking to you. Things they should have an issue with are suddenly okay. For example, they go from saying, I guess you can go hang out with the guys, to, sure, it sounds fun. If you know it normally bothers them and they suddenly don't care, it's a sign that they don't feel the need to invest in you anymore. Both of these symptoms became noticeable 6 months before the breakup, but looking back, they were happening for closer to 18 months. As others have stated, relationships don't end when you start fighting all the time. They end when you should fight, but don't. Story 37. If your love language is physical touch and you're suddenly not getting any or it's steadily decreasing, that's a sign of a problem. I'm someone who needs physical touch. That doesn't have to be a lot. Anything from cuddling and kissing to a fleeting but purposeful graze of the elbow or lower back is enough. I found that my ex and I could still have fun conversations and watch movies together. We were basically still friends, but she went from being very touchy with me to almost avoiding getting close to me. Obviously, I don't think being in a relationship obligates someone to physical affection, but I don't think I'm the only person who gets what I mean. When I tried to bring it up and talk about why she seemed so distant, she didn't really know what to say. In the end, we slowly drifted apart because we just wanted different things from each other. We're still good friends, if anyone's wondering. Story 38. For me, a significant sign that a relationship is in trouble is when I no longer cry during a fight. I'm someone who gets emotional during big arguments because I care so much. I hate it, but I can't help it. My tears are a sign that I want the fight to end, no matter who started it, so we can be happy with each other again. In my previous relationships, I knew I was emotionally checking out when I stopped crying. I didn't care if we were in a fight or if either of us stayed mad. My fiance and I rarely fight, but when we do, I still cry. He hates seeing me cry, but he also knows it's actually a good thing. Story 39. When intimacy became mentally painful and I cried during it because there was no longer any connection, that was a major red flag for me. We'd been fighting for months and I had put a tentative end to things, but we were still living together. That last time we were intimate, when there was no connection between us, was the final nail in the coffin. Nothing he said or did after that could fix it. Don't wait until the other person is done with a relationship to get therapy. Don't accuse someone of not trying to make it work when they've been trying for months and you've ignored it. And never open up your relationship to fix it unless it's something you both truly want. It will break you or your partner, and there will be no fixing it. Story 40. If you're here looking for random signs that tell you what to do in your life and they seem to point to ending your relationship, like, I've been hearing a lot of breakup songs, could this be over? And you subconsciously want it to be over already. You're feeling unclear or think you don't have enough reason to, so you're looking for outside validation. If what you call signs lead to a reconsideration or give love another try, that means you should, because that's what your heart and mind want. If all the signs point to a breakup, then do it. Even if you cry at the thought of losing what you thought was the love of your life, your intuition knows, so listen to it. If you're here trying to assess if your relationship is over, it probably is. If you're here and sensing your relationship is over and that is eating you up inside, it isn't. Go find a post about how to fix a rough patch in a relationship, or better yet, stop looking to complete outsiders who have no idea how you or your partner feel about each other and be strong enough in your own feelings to either fix or end things. Story 41. Guilt. I had a lot of relationships before I met the one. Whenever a relationship was declining, I would feel guilty about numerous things, like meeting friends alone or being late. I've now been with my significant other for 6 years, and she almost never makes me feel guilty. We reflect a lot on our daily lives and can talk about anything. We almost never argue. Long story short, if both partners have the room to be happy without having to feel guilty, you're going to have a good time. Perhaps the most important lesson I've learned in my life is that you don't need a person to make you happy. Learn to be happy on your own. And in a relationship, focus on giving happiness rather than receiving it. If both partners do that, you've got a good thing. Story 42. The cute things stop. What you once found romantic becomes a reason for an eye roll, a groan, or is just annoying. Little quirks start to bug you. They show more interest in something else than what you're saying unless they truly multitask or have ADHD. Coping mechanisms shift. You go from talking to each other to reading, binge watching TV or social media. You feel obligated to reply to their texts, answer their calls, or spend time with them. You look forward to having the bed to yourself. There's an uptick in smoking or drinking on either side. You feel like you have to rationalize or make excuses for their behavior. You think that if it wasn't for the kids, you would have already left. You look for excuses to stay. Little things become big issues. Issues never seem to resolve and haunt every argument. Fighting becomes the norm. You feel like a paycheck and nothing more. There's a lack of commitment to simple things like going out or making plans. New interests push larger amounts of time between you. A friend's issue becomes consuming or take precedence over your relationship. You start asking for relationship advice. The blame game starts. You or your partner start pushing good friends away. Feels like you're doing all the work in the relationship. A healthy relationship is a two-way street that takes a lot of work to maintain. Time apart should not be needed, but should be done occasionally. Story 43. You stop being stupid together. It's a sign of a problem. A bad day or a trip is normal, but if you don't look back and make fun of yourselves or you no longer do silly things together like dancing in the kitchen, then you probably can't be bothered or no longer feel comfortable enough to make a fool of yourself in front of them. If you can't comfortably humiliate yourself in front of your significant other, then you're probably no longer comfortable with them. Also, in my opinion, if you're in a group of people and your partner makes a joke that's the funniest thing you've ever heard but no one else gets it, then your relationship is pretty stable. Story 44. I was with a great guy for 2 years. While getting to know him, I would ask him questions about where he was going in life and what he wanted in a partner. Normal conversations for a relationship that's over 6 months old. He would say he had never thought about it and didn't know. If I brought up anything remotely serious, he would change the subject, talk about his cat, fall asleep, or send me a meme. What made me realize I should break up with him was that we were worlds apart emotionally and that in the end, he just wanted a companion so he wouldn't be lonely. He never opened up the way a partner should, in or out of bed. Unless he crawled out of the depths like Cthulhu, I had to dump him. It was like dating a void. Story 45. I don't know if this is a non-obvious sign, but it didn't fully occur to me until long after it happened in my marriage. When you stop caring whether the other person is happy. This might seem obvious, but it's less so when you translate it to everyday situations. For example, if your partner needs to be verbally complimented, you make the effort to do that even when it's not an obvious time for it. If your partner cares about keeping a super clean home, do you make the effort to maintain their desired level of cleanliness? If your partner craves quality time together, do you make time for it in your schedule at the expense of other things you want to do? There are thousands of examples. If you truly care for your partner, these are things you either actively want to do or care enough about the person in the relationship to do, even if it's not your natural reaction. Based on my limited experience and many conversations with friends, I think it's really difficult to come back from that tipping point. If you lack even the basic amount of care it takes to want to make your partner happier, your capacity to do the small things that maintain a healthy relationship is low. This makes the larger issues that will be encountered over time almost impossible to overcome. If you find yourself saying a version of, whatever, I just don't care enough to do that, or that's dumb, in response to relatively low-cost things that you would know would make your partner happy, it may be time to rethink things. Story 46. My wife and I had a baby, and she decided I needed to sleep in another room because my snoring was loud, which was fine. At one point, she stopped wearing the engagement ring I gave her so she wouldn't hurt the baby. Her mother lived with us, and if I suggested that she watch the baby for just a few hours so we could have a date night, she always said no. Once, I bought tickets to a concert and ended up going by myself. Every time I suggested we take our baby to visit my family who lived in town, she had an excuse as to why she didn't feel like going. I was never allowed to take her daughter anywhere by myself, which made me feel like she didn't trust me to keep our baby safe. My family saw our daughter once in the hospital, the day after she was born, and one more time 9 months later for a few hours. Her mother accompanied me to my family's house but stayed in the car the whole time. That was the day before we moved out of state. I had a horrible gut feeling when we were getting ready to move that as soon as we got to our new home, the relationship would be over. Sure enough, we moved, and one day we started to argue, and she just blurted out that she didn't want to be with me anymore. I moved out into my own place in a state that I can't stand to be in, but I'll do anything to see my daughter. I saw it coming to an end before we moved, but I tried everything on my end to keep us together. I figured it's always rough after you have a child. Everything was great, even shortly after we had the baby, but I guess people just change sometimes. Story 47. When you subconsciously feel insecure about opening up to your partner, it's a major red flag. This happens when you feel they either won't care or it will lead to an argument. This habit of cocooning yourself in a relationship is a sign that things are headed toward darkness. By this point, your mind is getting obvious signs that the relationship is in trouble, but your heart keeps believing to protect itself from breaking. Another major sign is when you don't feel the urge to keep them updated about your daily life or any significant matters because you know they will somehow make them insignificant. Hopefully, you can recognize these early signs and take action before they take a toll on your relationship. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.